Hey, what's up, guys? It's towards the end of March, and I'm here with Steve Sherk, and he's a guide on public land up here in north central and northwestern PA. Today, we're going to talk about a really big buck that he's been scouting called Crazy 12. He's going to go through a little bit of the history of this buck, and then we're going to talk about how to do postseason scouting. He's very knowledgeable on hunting these mountain bucks on state game lands and public land, and he's going to give us some information. We're going to pick his brain, and hopefully this can help you guys in your postseason scouting for future hunts. All right, so tell us about this buck.
Yeah, so anyways, it was the summer of 2018. I encountered a really impressive 12-point buck here in the Allegheny Mountains. He was just had a really unique rack, and it was a deer that I really wanted to learn about. So going into that season, I spent a lot of time in the area. I was getting pictures of him. I really was trying to focus on, number one, where he was bedding. Kind of long story short, going into that season, and once it started, I had a pretty good game plan, and I felt I might get an opportunity if all went well. And I actually missed him. He was probably a 140-inch deer that year, and it was a huge disappointment. But then this past season, he blew up into 160-inch deer, so that made me feel a little bit better. He's just a deer that is just a really special deer, one that I have put a ton of time into, and it's been just an awesome learning experience, learning about a giant public land buck that's elusive and just extremely intelligent. And I'm really looking forward to this coming season. Hopefully I can redeem myself and get another crack at him.
Okay, so Steve's going to tell us about why we are exactly where we are on this hillside.
Sure. So anyways, the most important thing when you're hunting these big public land bucks, especially in these mountains, is you want to know where he's bedding, because that's going to be the most consistent thing he's going to do over anything. He's going to have usually a smaller area, maybe quarter mile at the most, probably more just a few 100-yard stretch of an area where he's going to be bedding almost every day through certain periods of the year. So it was early last October, I did have to come in here and bump him once. This is where I thought he was bedding. I'm actually standing right over his bed right now. This was one of his primary beds. And I did come in early October just to make sure that he was bedding here, and I bumped him out, and that's just kind of a normal thing. You're not going to know if he's bedding there unless you see him. But the unfortunate thing was he did bed here consistently for a little while, but as I was hunting him in early archery season, the more pressure I put near this bed, it actually did move them out. So my point is, there's a lot of us that are really trying to gain knowledge and becoming these bedroom type hunters, and actually more I've learned is you're much better off to stay back from these bedding areas. Try to get right on the edges, because in these mountains you get a lot of wind shifts, and that's what was hurting me last year. Was I would be set up, I was in a tree just 30-40 yards away from this bed, and I know that might sound too close. This was actually going to be a morning setup where I would try to get in here before he was here. But my point is, say like on an afternoon hunt, I would be maybe 70 to 100 yards from a bed, and that way he couldn't see me, but I wanted to catch him those last few minutes of daylight that he would get up from his bed. But my point is the wind was shifting, and this deer, I'd hear him crashing through this thick brush here. I realized that getting right on top of these beds is a huge gamble, and probably not something that you really want to do. So,
and you were saying that when you bumped him, that it took him a long time. Maybe he hasn't really been bedding back as often.
He actually, after once I literally was hunting here, he did come back to bed after I bumped him here. I think it was right before archery season. He did come back here to bed again a lot, but then throughout the first even week or two of archery season, as I was hunting 70 to 100 yards from here, he never actually came back again to my knowledge. So it just goes to show that these big mature public land bucks do not put up with anything. it may actually hurt the more you get to know them, the more confident you get in,
Yeah.
in your setups and hunting them, and actually that might actually hurt you. So yeah, he never, to my knowledge, bedded here again. But
And you
maybe,
still, you pointed out earlier when we got here, there's still some hair.
still hair right there. Yep, that's
let's
his hair
see here.
too.
Yep, you can just see a few pieces of hair there.
Yep. And this was, like I said, this was his main bed right up until probably close around the second week of October. So, but this is still a really important thing, and we're filming this as postseason scouting, and now is the best time to come into these areas and learn about these deer. I was telling John earlier that the year before there was a really mature 8-point using these beds in this area. And the biggest, maybe not the biggest, I shouldn't say biggest, but the most dominant buck in every area will get the best bedding spots. So it's funny how the year before a really mature 8-point was in here, and then last year that 12 shifted into these beds, because this is, we're inside of a really thick clear cut here.
Yeah.
But I think another good point is these deer don't like to lay right in the brush. They like to lay somewhere that they can see. And they're using their eyes just as much as their nose. They want to bed somewhere inside the cover, but then they like to look for an opening, and that way, if predators do come, they can see them before they get on top of them and still have a chance to get away. If you're able to get out in the woods this time of year, and it's really important to do it, because we're going into these bedding areas, finding these beds, and we're not hurting anything.
Yep.
And this next season coming up, you're going to be way ahead of the game, and rather than, unfortunately I did have to come in here early October and bump him once just to kind of get an idea where he was bedding. So no, we're just getting ahead of the game right now. And
now, what do you think the best month is? Should we start, some guys, let's say they don't hunt the late season and it's right after rifle season and they come in here, or should they wait, till after, the late season flintlock hunt is over and right after, maybe the 1st of February, or should they wait, towards the end of March when we're at, maybe hopefully that, let's say we're looking for sheds and we don't know whether he's going to drop in February, he's going to hold them maybe till the 1st of, April. Sure. And if you come in here to look for him and you bump him, he may drop his antlers, who knows where, yep. And you don't realize that you bumped him. What would your, but then again, you have trail cameras, so you learn a lot about this deer through trail cameras and how important that is too.
Oh, absolutely. But getting to the scouting part, I would rather wait till, late March or early April, just for the fact that some of these bucks could be pressured completely out of the area through gun season. They may not be in these spots, although there's a good chance, but right after hunting season, I think the intel that you're getting might not be the same intel that you might be able to use, for early archery season and, other times of the year. So I would let the deer get, settled back down, back into these areas, and then, but you can see that the bed here, there's still hair in it from last October. So,
and we know there's still deer coming in here, so we've got
definitely.
Some droppings here.
Yep. So, yeah, I would wait until later on, and especially up here in the north too, we usually have a foot of snow even going into March, so it's going to be tough to find beds and that kind of evidence anyway. But then as far as the cameras go, I think it's important too when you get on a big buck like this to run a cluster of cameras and kind of surrounding these bedding areas to get a better feel on how he's using that area, where he might be entering and exiting, feeding, and so forth. So yeah, run clusters of cameras and get in here late winter, early spring, and the scent we're putting down, yeah, we might be bothering him a little bit, but he's got months to let things cool down and forget about us. And this is a spot too I found through postseason. Like last year, I can't say I had a camera on this bed going, like making sure, but what I know is he would come, I would get pictures of him almost coming right up through here, and I've known of this bed, for,
yeah, you can
for
see
a few
right
years
there.
now. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a little bench right here,
Yep.
a little depression,
He's got this
and he can
nasty
just sit
tick
right
on his
there.
back.
Yeah,
But,
and he can look right down through there.
but anyways, I think what I want to explain is most of your bucks, don't be confused. They have several beds, but in a smaller area. Maybe like I said before, 500-yard stretch, maybe bigger. So you want to find these clusters of beds, but you got to learn how to hunt them, and you don't want to get right on top of them. But you'll find that a big dominant buck like that, you might notice a big lone bed here, another big lone bed 100 yards away. Those are all his beds, most likely. They're not other beds. They usually don't bed with smaller bucks or even does through most of the season. So yeah, I just think this is a really good spot right here.
Yeah, that's. Yep.
And one other point I want to bring up is 90% of these bucks are bedding almost 3/4 of the way up the hill, if not higher. There's usually more wind up here, and I even find that with the does too. Does, almost all your deer in these mountains will bed on the higher locations. So when you're looking for bedding areas, you can pretty much eliminate anywhere midway down the hill and below.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because we're not at the top.
No.
And but we're still up there quite a ways.
Yeah,
I mean, you could see how. I mean, it looks like we're level with the top of that other hill over there, but we're not. We're down over quite a bit, and to find these, you're going to have to do a little bit of hiking.
Yep, and almost all of them, if there's thick cover, they're going to be in thick cover or around the edge of it. So you can eliminate so much area by staying away from the lower elevations and staying out of the wide open woods. So that's just when you're coming in, to these big woods like this with hundreds of thousands of acres of land, you can almost get like just clueless where to start. But if you can eliminate a ton of acreage, then that's going to save you a lot of time and put you in the right areas faster.
So we're just walking through, and I noticed some droppings here, and they're huge. And he's like, "Oh yeah," Steve's like, "Oh yeah, that's normal."
Yeah.
These big bucks up here, I'm like, "Man, that's huge."
Yep, no,
I don't know if you can tell with the camera or anything. I mean, to have any normal size deer droppings beside it, but that is huge.
Yeah,
you may
not be able to prove whether it's a buck dropping or doe dropping, but I can tell
either
you
way,
that thing is
big.
Yeah, that's a big.
All right, so now we're a little bit from where the bedding was over here, and Steve was telling me about why he thinks this is a good place he's going to set up on this buck for next archery season.
Sure, yeah, I think this is probably where I'm going to focus on, because I'm about good 200 or 300 yards from the bedding. Last year, like I said before, when I was getting right on top of it, it was only making things worse. But there's a trail right up here. One of the only trails I've found kind of coming to and from the bedding. It's right up there.
Right through there.
And we were just even yeah, what is it right here? There's even a big track recently coming down through here, possibly even, him.
Yep, you can see a little bit of the markings in the snow. Now, they're melting, but there you can see it's down into the mud there.
Last night. But yeah, so my point is I was trying to find something where I can get several hundred yards away. That way, when the wind's swirling, there's a good chance maybe my scent will just dissipate or go, a completely different direction. And about what I showed you, about 100 yards over there 2 years ago is where I did have an opportunity and missed him. So yeah, my point is you got to find these kind of spots where there's trails or sign coming to and from these bedding areas, and getting far enough away where you can still possibly get an opportunity at them in the daylight, but not getting right in there where you're going to bump them. So I'm probably going to have a stand right up in that cherry tree right there.
Yeah. So tell us how you come in and out of this place. It's a little bit different terrain.
Sure, yeah. So the thing you're going to deal with when you're hunting the fringes of these bedding areas is you can look at some of the cover right there, and if you were to even try to walk through there silently, you're going to spook not only maybe that particular buck, but probably every deer within few hundred yards. You're going to make a ton of noise. So I'm always looking for quiet entry and exit routes. And you find like a real nice grassy road like this, that's what I'll try to walk in and out of, just for the fact that it's so quiet.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll even go out of my way just to find a
Even if it takes a little longer to get to your stand, the quieter the better.
Exactly. Like I said, this trail here will go about 100 yards to the south of where I want to hunt, but then it's gonna save me in the long run, because literally, I mean, for the most of the time, you can't even hear yourself walking.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important for people to consider when you do find where a big buck is bedding. You got to keep your noise down, and you got to find those right routes to take where if you got an old logging trail like this, they're obviously very unlikely that they're going to hear you. So I thought that's a pretty important thing to include.
Oh yeah.
Especially even scouting. Right now, you should be planning ahead. Okay, how can I hunt this area and without interrupting these deer and letting them know that I'm hunting them? One of the most important signs when you're really trying to lock in on a buck and find his main core bedding area is a signpost rub. And signpost rubs are hit every year. Sometimes they're hit, maybe they might go on 5-10 years. As long as the habitat is right in that area for bedding, those rubs will get hit every year. And if you look right here, this rub here has been getting hit for at least 5 years now. And that's kind of what dialed me into this spot. Was there's no, I mean, maybe a spike occasionally comes up and hits that, but for the most part, there's some big bucks rubbing antlers on that tree. And it might not look so fresh just because it's been hit so hard throughout the years that there's very little bark.
Yeah, they're going
left
clear
on
up on here too.
Yep. And you'll even notice, you'll see these old cores right here that years ago that didn't look like that, but just the fact that this tree gets rubbed so often that the dead core now is starting to show.
Something to look for.
Yep, exactly. No, that's a sign of a monster buck, and almost every bedding area you'll have a couple of them, especially on the fringes of the bedding area. I like to get on the fringes of those core bedding areas, and I'll try to find active scrapes. These are great places to hunt, especially late October. They're going to get hit every year, and you can find them postseason, especially when you see these beat up licking branches.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
it's not
they
so
got
much
this one chewed off.
Right. The dirt down below, I mean, it doesn't look fresh or anything, because obviously they're not they're not scraping
in there.
Yep, they're not scraping right now. But we had a ton of pictures of the Crazy 12 at this scrape, and it's potentially going to be a really good spot next season to set up, but mostly late October. I don't really focus a whole lot on scrapes in particular till right before the main part of the rut kicks in, but I just think it's really important to get on the fringe of these areas and find these scrapes that are getting hit every year, and they can be really good spots to set up.
All right, well, Steve has a shed from Crazy 12, and tell us about this shed.
Yeah, so it was early January, and I checked some cameras, and I realized that he dropped. I wasn't quite sure when, but I had a huge bodied deer in that bedding area that we've already shown you, and I had pictures of him with no antlers, so I knew it was him. So I was really lucky, actually, though. I didn't even look for more than 5 minutes that day, and got to where as soon as I figured he was wintering, and there was a shed right there.
Oh,
so
man.
I was super stoked on getting it, and then I figured finding the other side would be a piece of cake. Finding this one in the first 5 minutes, well, it's been a few months now, and I haven't found that other side. But what I did realize was he dropped that other side before November 30th, and somewhere between November 16th and November 30th, which is really rare. So that shed could be miles away. Unfortunately, I don't think it was in his wintering area. So I'm just happy to at least get one side of him. I got one side of him last year as well, and The only other thing I'd really like to do is get my hands on him when still connected to his head. That would be a little bit better. This shed here is about 70 inches, so he's, with that other side even being bigger, I'm going to say he's around 160 gross.
Wow.
So.
Steve, I want to thank you for taking me out and showing me some of your spots on how to guide, on and scout for postseason on these big bucks. Something that is very difficult for a lot of people that don't know what they're doing. There's so much land, so much public land, you don't even know where to start or anything like that. But just talking with you a little bit, you can see, guys, how he runs lots of trail cameras. He's in the woods a lot, and using that scouting all year round. Scouting doesn't end right when deer season. He is still in the woods right now. It's March. It's not just shed hunting season. It's post-season scouting. Yep. You do your shed hunting while you're doing that, and he still has his trail cameras out. So I want to thank you again for taking me along and being able to show some of the guys here that are watching the channel how to do public land hunting up here in north central, northwest PA. So you have a guiding service, and we mentioned it. So how can guys get a hold of you to find out more?
Sure, they can find me on Facebook at Sherk's Guide Service or Instagram. I also have a website, sherksguideservice.com. Those are kind of the three main ways everyone can contact me. We still have some openings for 2020 season, so if you want to come up to these big woods here and come after some of these huge bucks that we've been hunting, obviously you can see there's still plenty left, and we'd love to get you booked. And other than that, I just want to say thank you as well for having me. And just like me, I'm sure we're all looking forward to next season.
Oh yeah, you guys have got to check out his Facebook page and look at the big bucks that are still out there right now roaming around on public land in Pennsylvania. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Till next time.